Hello, this is video number 2 in my personal challenge of posting once every day. I've already failed the challenge because I posted 1 week ago. I never even posted that video yet. I just filmed it, didn't even upload it yet. So I'm actually doing really poorly on my personal challenge. But I knew it would be very hard for me because I have an intense fear of being seen. Even though nobody is going to see these videos for a long time, probably. If I eventually post hundreds of them, which is my goal, then eventually I might get a watcher or two. But until then, I should not be so afraid. And maybe by the time I get to video 100, I won't be so afraid for people to see them because I'll be so much better at it. Just imagine how much better I'll be when I've done 100 videos. Wow. I think exposure therapy is the only way to overcome shyness. And I think that by putting myself online, it really is the ultimate form of bravery, I feel like, because whatever you put online, could theoretically exist forever. Even if I were to take the video down, there could still be maybe somebody somewhere who downloaded it and reposted it somewhere like that. Even though that would probably never happen, it's still possible. It technically could. And so that's why it can be really hard to scrub the internet if there's something you want to hide. Like all these celebrities and things who get canceled from their tweets from 20 years ago where they were racist or something. Like, if people took screenshots of that, it doesn't even matter if you take it down. And also they have websites that archive parts of the internet. So even if you take it down, there's still an archive of it. So yeah, when you post things on the internet, it's really scary, actually. So I think that's a big form of bravery, to be honest. Hats off to me. You know what I mean? And everyone else who posts videos online. I think a lot of people don't even realize that they're being brave when they do that. I think they live in the moment and just take action very impulsively, and they don't even think about the consequences. Whereas I tend to think about the consequences so much that I end up not acting at all and do nothing. Yay. So I'm trying to overcome that by actually doing something. I think in my last video, what did I talk about? I talked about this 90-day video challenge. Yeah, it was like a week ago. I already forgot what I talked about. This is why I need to do it every day. So anyway, why don't I talk about what I've been really into recently, which is thinking about the origins of the universe in terms of theoretical physics, and also connecting woo-woo spirituality to hard science and theoretical science. To start, the Big Bang is what is the current going theory for how the universe began. But there are even theories beyond the Big Bang, like what caused the Big Bang. And I don't remember all the names for the various theories, but there was a theory like the multiple universe theory, the multiverse theory. There was this idea, perhaps, that our universe split off from another universe, and that was the Big Bang. And when it split off, essentially matter and antimatter did not get formed in equal amounts. If you look around you, you'll notice there's a lot of matter, but you don't see any antimatter. You actually, if there was antimatter, you would be able to see it. It's not invisible matter. It's just you don't see it because it doesn't exist in our universe anymore. But it was believed that at the time of the Big Bang, matter and antimatter were formed because in the universe originally, there was a lot of background radiation, very high energy radiation. And radiation is just another word for light. Light is just electromagnetic waves. And when we talk about a radiation, we're talking about waves or charged particles that are moving in a wave-like fashion. But in this instance, there were no particles because we didn't have matter yet. So it was just waves of energy, aka light, photons. And when this Big Bang happened, this really huge force of energy split light almost like through a prism into matter and antimatter. But the prism had a skew to it, so light did not refract equally into matter and antimatter. Instead, matter won out, and that's why we exist. We exist due to an imbalance in the force. We should not be here, but because the light split unevenly and there was more matter than antimatter, life exists. Because if matter and antimatter had been in equal amounts, they would have canceled each other out. Because antimatter is just matter, except all of the charges are reversed, and the spins of all of the quantum particles are reversed. And when antimatter and matter come into contact, they both cease to exist, and they turn back into light. So if you think about it, everything in our universe came from light, which is really interesting if you are a Christian, which I am not. But if you are, then you believe that God once upon a time said, "Let there be light." And then after light came, reality came, or the earth came, or humans, or whatever. I don't know. I didn't read that book, so. But I think that's very interesting how the Christians kind of got that right. They kind of got that right. Light did come first. But what came before the light, and how'd the light get here? See, this is what I'm wondering. It seems like perhaps we live in a multiverse. I'm thinking that we probably do. And there are theories about black holes that perhaps black holes could be portals to other universes. You know, if you know about a black hole, it's essentially this area of extremely condensed mass. It's like condensed into a singularity, and it's so massive that it sucks everything into it, because anything with mass has a gravitational force. You know, it acts on the gravitational field and pulls other objects into it. And every object with mass does this, including people, objects, the planet, celestial bodies. We all have mass and we all have gravitational force. But the more mass you have, the more gravitational force you have. And so a black hole is something where the mass is really, really condensed into a small area, and that causes a ton of gravity in that very small area, which is what a black hole is. And there are also white holes, which are the opposite, where instead of sucking things in, it pushes things out. And there's a theory that black holes could be connected to white holes. And maybe in one universe there's a black hole, and in another universe there's a corresponding white hole, essentially effectively creating a wormhole from one dimension to another. This is all just a theory. None of this is proven. We can't even get even remotely close to a black hole. You know, we can't send, anything near one because it would just get destroyed. So, and never come back. So, and they're so far away that we couldn't relay any information back to Earth. So we just don't have the technology to know the answer to this yet. So all we have is theories, and that's an interesting theory, I think. Another really interesting theory I like about the universe is that of a fractal reality. I was learning a lot about the Mandelbrot equation, which is z equals z squared plus c, which is a recursive equation because z is equal to z squared. So whatever the result of the equation is gets fed right back into the equation squared plus c. So it's an infinite recursion. And if you look at pictures of a Mandelbrot set, they're really, really cool to look at. Maybe I'll put a picture in here. And what is interesting is that if c is 0, then it just is a singularity. There's nothing to look at. Z just is equal to 0. And z squared, 0 squared is just 0. It just stays 0 forever. But if you start adding values to c, then it starts forming cool shit. And that, I feel like, is a metaphor for how the universe was formed. There was some sort of interference in the balance. It wasn't exactly 0. There was an imbalance, a C, that then caused this really interesting creation that we now live in. And that's kind of, I feel like this Mandelbrot picture represents life as we know it. And I don't think that we have proof that we live in a fractal universe. I think it would be impossible to prove that. But we have a lot of evidence that we live in a fractal universe because we can see fractals everywhere in nature. And also, I think it's interesting to think about fractals as they relate to reincarnation, because the concept of reincarnation is that when you die, you will then come back as another human. I actually don't know. Do they believe you can come back as animals too? I don't know. But I think to some degree, this is self-evident. And physics has already proved this because energy can not be created or destroyed. It simply changes forms. So any energy that we possess while we are alive, that energy does not disappear when we die. It just, gets turned into heat. The electrical energy in our body discharges into the air and the ground around us. Our energy just changes forms. Our bodies decompose, they fertilize the soil, the tree absorbs nutrients from the soil, animals eat our body, etc. So like our energy is being recycled. And so in a way, our energy lives on forever. And also, once you realize that, you realize that we all kind of are the same because we are all made up of the same stuff, the same dust from stars exploding. And so we are all one. That's kind of what spiritual people like to say. They like to say we are all one. But what the hell does that mean? I think it just means, on a very fundamental chemical level, we are all the same stuff. And ultimately, we don't come from Africa, we come from somewhere much more ancient, which is cosmic background radiation. We come from light, ultimately, at the very origins of the universe. And then that light gets split into matter, and somehow matter turns into life. Not quite sure how that worked. I'll have to study on that some more. Yeah, so that's what I've been thinking about recently, trying to figure out how the universe works. I really like the idea of a fractal reality because that has a lot of ramifications that are really interesting. For example, if we are living in a fractal reality, that means every single thing that we do contributes to the fractal reality. And just to clarify, what is a fractal? A fractal is just that Mandelbrot thing that we talked about earlier. It's just this recursive, perpetual form that changes shape but is self-similar. So you don't see the same thing, the same identical things occurring over and over again, but you see very, very, very similar things occurring over and over again. Not exactly the same, but similar. So that's why they call it self-similar. And so, for example, me as a person, I will never exist again, but someone really similar to me will. In fact, many people very similar to me will exist, and very similar to you and everyone else you know. And throughout time, people similar to us have always existed. And so in that sense, you could think about all of the people who have existed since the origins of humanity 200-ish thousand years ago. There have been a lot of people just like you, just like me. And in that way, we are not special at all. Isn't that so cool? But also, when you think about it, all of the actions of all the people who came before us, in a way, affect the lives that we are living now. And in a way, that's kind of proof of a fractal reality, is it not? I mean, because how the fractal works is the result of the previous equation informs the calculation of the current equation, which informs the calculation of the future equation. You know what I mean? So it's like everything that came before us impacts what's going on right now. I know that that's not that profound. Everybody knows that, right? But when you realize that, that means everything you're doing right now is impacting everyone in the future, whether you want it to or not. Literally everything you're doing. So that means we actually have a lot of impact. You know, if we want... But, and what's even more interesting about it, though, like with the Mandelbrot equation, is that it's not just that everything in the past informs the present. It's that everything that happened in the past exponentially informs the present. Okay, not exponentially, it's just to the power of 2 in the Mandelbrot equation. But who says that our fractal reality is to the power of 2? It could be to the power of 1,000,000. Who knows? You know, we don't know. We don't know what the equation is. It's just Mandelbrot just came up with that equation, but that doesn't necessarily represent our reality or our universe. But I guess the point is, it's not necessarily linear. In fact, it's often not linear, because if you've ever had an upward spiral or a downward spiral in your life, some instance where you did a positive thing and that made you feel really good, and so then you did another positive thing, and then another thing, and then another thing, and you just all of a sudden changed your whole life very quickly, that's not linear growth, that's exponential growth. And I feel like our universe acts on that same premise. And so that means everything that has happened exponentially informs the present, and everything we're doing right now exponentially informs the future. So our action is not just impactful, it's exponentially impactful. So what we do now matters a lot. Feel free to push back on me on this and disagree. I'm just talking shit right now. I don't really know what I'm talking about. But I think that's a cool idea. You know, I've always been a fan of taking life seriously and trying to do cool shit with it. But at the same time, you know, in the grand scheme of things, I guess none of this matters. We could really just do anything and it wouldn't make a difference, because we're having impact no matter what we do, good or bad. In fact, the universe doesn't even recognize a good or a bad. There's no such thing. And I think that could be kind of disheartening for people who have tightly clung to the idea that someone is watching them and judging them and loving them, when in fact, I think there isn't. I think there really isn't. That's my opinion. You're welcome to have your own. But I really think that we're not really here for a reason. We're here because of an accident, which is when our universe was formed, light did not split evenly into matter and antimatter. And so as a result, there's too much matter left over. So we shouldn't even be here. We should have gotten canceled out billions of years ago. That's what I think. I think it was just an accident. Isn't that cool to think about? So literally nothing we do matters. We're not even supposed to be here. Maybe. Or maybe something caused that to happen on purpose. I don't know. We'll never know, right? Isn't that fun? Yeah. What else would I like to talk about? Oh, it was Mother's Day recently. Oh, wow, this is already 23 minutes. What have I even said? I feel like I just started talking. Yeah, well, it was Mother's Day recently, and recently I've been thinking a lot about families and how I don't like my family, and I don't really keep in contact with them. We're not estranged, you know? I do keep in contact, technically, but it's really minimal, like, and I almost never initiate the contact. And I think I just grew up feeling like I didn't fit in with my family, and I also felt like they never really liked the real me. And this sounds harsh to say, but I guess I never really liked the real them either. So that's what I mean when I say I never felt like I fit in. And it's interesting, as a child of parents, you know, children really don't have that unconditional love for their parents the way that parents often do for their kids. Kids really feel attachment to their parents when they're very, very, very young. But as they grow older, they realize that attachment that they felt as a child isn't really there anymore. And then they start wanting to be more independent, and then they rebel, you know, the rebellious teenage years. And then for many of us, those years never stop, and we just get older, but we're still rebellious and we still don't like them. And I'm in my 30s now, and I'm still not really a huge fan. I don't think I'll ever be a fan, honestly. I'm old now. I don't think it's gonna change. Yeah. And also, I just think the concept of Mother's Day is really stupid. It's really arbitrary. And I think that capitalism likes to make up stupid days like that to pressure you into participating in consumerism and buying shit that nobody really wants or needs, just to stimulate the economy. Hallmark probably invented Mother's Day, you know? Actually, it makes me wonder who did invent Mother's Day. What an idiotic idea. And then the fact that we all went along with it. Probably because the thought of being against Mother's Day sounds like you're against mothers. And I think people were afraid of sounding like they were against mothers. Oh gosh, no, I would never be against mothers. Yeah, Mother's Day, that's a great idea. And then Father's Day probably came afterwards, because fuck fathers, right? And then I guess we just stopped there. I don't know why we stopped there. Like, businesses didn't want to pressure us into buying shit for Sister's Day and Brother's Day and shit like that. I mean, really, they really missed out. There's a lot of stupid dates we could have instead. But I just boycott all of it. I think it's all stupid. I think birthdays are stupid. I think Christmas is stupid. I think Halloween is fun. That one's not really a consumerist holiday unless you buy a shit ton of crap to decorate your yard with or something. But if you just enjoy spooky stuff, I like spooky stuff. I've always liked Halloween. That's probably the only one I actually like. Even though Easter is like such a fake holiday, I like the colors. I like the pastel colors. We should have pastels more often. Why do we only bring them out once a year? I like them. We should have pastels all year round. Um, yeah, but like that is such a pagan holiday that the Christians stole and turned into to some nonsense. Um, yeah. Okay, well, this video is 30 minutes long, and I probably said a bunch of nonsense that's not even true. So feel free to fact check me in the comments and tell me all the things I got wrong. That would be really interesting. Okay, and then I'll see you tomorrow, I guess.